we are looking to democratize EV charging. So we are putting fast chargers paired with solar and storage at fast food restaurants. We do both the installation and then provide software as a service product to serve as an energy management system. So balancing, what's going on with the solar, the storage, and the chargers. Front-end solution to interact with the chargers. So this is very typical if you go to any charging station.
Welcome to Business Ninjas, brought to you by WriteForMe, where you'll hear from business leaders who are out there growing their business and slaying it every day. Learn from the masters. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, this is Max Pittman from WriteForMe, and you're listening to another episode of the Business Ninjas podcast, where we meet the experts who are making things happen and scaling their businesses. And today we're talking about ChargeNet Stations with Rebecca Wolkoff, who is the co-founder and CTO at ChargeNet. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, you bet. So ChargeNet Stations. ChargeNet is in the EV charging industry. The company's been around since 2019, and I'm definitely excited to dive into what's going on at ChargeNet. But before we jump into the organization itself and what you're focused on, the Business Ninjas community is built of entrepreneurs, executives like yourself, sales and marketing leaders. So as the CTO and co-founder at ChargeNet, tell the Business Ninjas community a little bit about yourself and some of the things you're focused on.
Awesome. Well, I am very, very focused on renewable energy. I did a report on global warming and climate change in 5th grade and decided on that point forward, I had to help solve this issue. So I, after college, got a job with this company called Demand Energy originally. We were installing energy storage in New York apartment buildings. And I was hired to write algorithms and software essentially for those storage units. And I thought that was really exciting because in order to get more renewables onto the grid, you need some way of storing those renewables, when they're not producing, when there's no wind or no solar. And I loved that idea. But the idea I've loved even more, and I've always been drawn to, is as we are producing more batteries and as electric vehicles are getting on the road, we've got all these little batteries that are driving around. And, how often are you driving compared to, your car being parked somewhere? And if we could somehow utilize when your car is parked somewhere to benefit the grid, I thought that'd be really powerful because then we're kind of, dual use cases for a battery. So that's kind of where I'm coming from and what led me to ChargeNet to begin with. I also, in my spare time, volunteer with a local robotics club. I'm a nerd and I loved robotics as a kid and in high school. So want to make sure I'm encouraging all young folks to get into STEM if that's of interest. And I also volunteer with this foundation called the Volta Foundation, which is a community of battery experts looking to continue to build up the community. So encourage folks to check that out too.
Very cool. Yeah, let's make sure we can include that in our description down below at the recording because I definitely want people to check that out. And I love that you've kind of in elementary school, you identified like where your passion was. And that's amazing. Like for me, my passion was sports. I didn't grow up to be 6'5" and be in the NBA, but I love like how you have, pursued the passion of renewable energy and making sure like we are putting the earth and leaving the earth in a better place than we found it. And I've learned so much recently myself about solar and storing solar here in California, and the push to get everybody to go to solar for their house and for their cars here. So I can see why, this is something that, you've been passionate about and it's still relevant from when you were in 5th grade to where we are here today. So it's really interesting. So what brought you to like co-founding ChargeNet, I guess? Like how what's the origin story there? I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, so I was the director of data science at Enel, and I absolutely loved what I was doing at Enel with energy storage. But again, I've always been drawn to that EV world and was always looking kind of for an opportunity to be more involved in the electric vehicle space because I thought there was just such a good opportunity there to benefit the grid, essentially. And so, although I was very, very satisfied, I had worked with Tosh Dutt before, one of the other co-founders, at a previous job, and actually at Demand Energy before they were bought. And he came to me and was talking through his idea of putting fast chargers in underserved communities, paired, potentially with renewable energy. And I thought this was, potentially the opportunity I'd been looking for. I'd kind of been looking for, as EVs were rising in the space. And this was about I think we started the conversation probably 2020. I think EVs were like maybe 2% in the US at that time of cars sold. And so it was just the very beginning, I think. And I guess we're still in the beginning of this EV revolution that I think we're going to hit. But I thought it was the right time to move over, and I loved the idea. I love the idea of creating really customer-friendly software. I have an electric vehicle. I don't know if anyone else listening or viewing has one, but if you do, and you've had it for more than maybe 2 years, you absolutely understand kind of some of the hardships that come along with going on a road trip and having to charge in weird places or being worried about where you have to charge. I've personally had to charge at a laundromat before. You just get like really weird stories. So kind of making electric vehicles more viable and more viable to help the grid is what I wanted to do.
Very cool. Yeah, I love that. You're seeing that there's a problem, right? Like, how do I get potential stations when underserved communities? So there's also an element of like social responsibility too that's playing into this, and not just like putting charging stations, in highly populous cities that, like lots of people drive Teslas, but no, it's even potentially even serving the communities that, starting to grow and starting to be able to afford those EV cars and ensuring that they can get affordable places for them to charge them at. So that's something I can definitely get behind. I can see why that's something that why you got behind as well. Yeah, so I don't want to put you on the spot here though. So like, I think we just started to kind of scratch the surface on like the value that ChargeNet Stations provides. But I know I've imagined, pitching ideas on Shark Tank or maybe even being the shark myself, right? So I'd love it if, you can give me, ChargeNet's elevator pitch. Like what problem, right, does ChargeNet solve specifically?
Absolutely. So we are looking to democratize EV charging. So we are putting fast chargers paired with solar and storage at fast food restaurants. We do both the installation and then provide software as a service product to serve as an energy management system. So balancing, what's going on with the solar, the storage, and the chargers. Front end solution to interact with the chargers. So this is very typical if you go to any charging station. You often need an app and a way to interact. And then, of course, a dashboard to kind of monitor what's going on that both our internal team will use for maintenance and operations, and for our partners like the restaurant franchisees it is to use to monitor what's going on, because we're also here to educate and show folks the value these assets can bring in. And we thoroughly believe that having solar paired with charging stations will bring in more customers, and customers who are excited about renewable energy and monitoring it. It's the only way to do that.
Very cool. So it sounds like it's almost like a full end solution service, and kind of this, it's a SaaS product too that you guys are offering in addition to like outsourcing the tech behind it to a customer. So it's like a one-stop shop for fast chargers with solar and storage.
Absolutely.
I love it. That's really interesting, right? Like you've thought about, okay, like what do we need on the front end for the consumer to be able to access this, and also what do we need on the back end for the franchisee or the organization that's going to be utilizing this to ensure that they're seeing an ROI as well, and they can kind of track the metrics that are there to associate with like how much use that these are getting. So, what are some of the things that these franchisees may find valuable, in that dashboard to them?
Yeah, so we monitor, the availability of the chargers, uptime, and utilization is usually the one folks care about the most, how often these chargers are being used. What's been really cool is month after month, we've been seeing increased utilization at our site. So that's been really fun to share with our customers. And I'd say those are probably the major things. Of course, they could also view like solar production and when the battery's running. But I think that's often more interesting to our internal team. Um, I think part of the piece of it that was really missing from the customer experience um, was some of these aspects on the front end for the customer and new users coming to our charging site. So all the data we collect could also be showed through our app. We obviously don't want to overwhelm the customer, but we do show things like what's the current solar production at the site. So, if that green energy is something you care about, you'll look at the app and say, oh, look, there's like 50 kilowatts of solar being produced. I could go charge my car.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So it sounds like, there's value for the customer to see almost like the back end and maybe even get them interested in like, and again, like trying to serve these underserved communities, right? Like trying to give them the tools and access to like educate themselves almost at, how this is actually working for them potentially. I don't know. I don't know if that's like something you guys have talked about, but that's kind of interesting. At least like maybe that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, we are all about trying to educate our customers, and a lot of folks who come to our station are first electric vehicle users. I was a little surprised. Maybe I shouldn't be so surprised at that, right? There's a growing electric vehicle population. It makes sense. We'd get a lot of new users. So one of the features we actually added very quickly on, like as an example of this, is people aren't super familiar with pricing. So when you charge your car, it's in dollars per kilowatt hour. And we created a little cute comparison between that and dollars per gallon. So you could like convert between the two, just if you're not really used to looking at it. And I think some of these like small, very user friendly, customer focused things can help educate anyone who comes to the site and make folks excited about charging their vehicles.
That's interesting. I love that. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, because I just started dabbling into solar myself, and I don't understand what kilowatt per hour kind of means, right? Like a lot of people don't, right? This is not something that like I have to deal with thinking about on a day-to-day basis. But when I'm looking at my SDG&E bill versus what solar can be like, then there starts to be a little bit more of a comparison that I'm now saying, okay, like this is kind of the difference that in cost that it would be. So that's super cool. You guys are trying to educate people like that. And, it sounds like you have kind of the front end solution, the back end solution, and obviously the charging itself, right? Like it sounds like all of that combined is a little bit of your like own secret sauce, right? How or why do like our customers, choosing, your solutions or your services, against like the Tesla chargers or the competition that might be out there?
Yeah, so we're hyper focused on the quick serve restaurant, so fast food segment, and retail as well, because our ultimate plans here are to make the customer experience super seamless with buying from these different retail or restaurant locations. So, where we want to get to, and, we're a seed-founded startup, so we're only at the beginning here. But what we dream of is a place where you pull in, to this charging station, you open up the ChargeNet app and start your charge, and then you keep going in the app and order your food. And we think a lot of these fast food restaurants will convert to maybe more of a Sonic-ish model as more EVs grow up. And someone will come get you your food in your car. You'll eat your food, or maybe you're saving it. Maybe you just waited the time it took to cook. You unplug your car and you're on your way, 100 miles in 10 to 15 minutes. And that's what we imagine. We want to integrate charging kind of in with the daily pattern of folks' lives. 80 million Americans eat at fast food restaurants every day. So putting, charging locations where people want them, and where it kind of aligns from a timing perspective is our goal here. And that's the world we want to build.
Yeah, integrating charging into our day-to-day lives, right? That's kind of what I'm hearing for you is like, yeah, you park your car, and you go in and go into this restaurant. Well, I could potentially be charging my car while at this restaurant or at the store, right? So I can see why like that's the value that you're getting behind. It seems very logical from my perspective, right? To be doing this at the locations. Maybe it's in the middle of, I'm thinking of like 395 going up the coast or going up the middle of California. There's really nothing up there, right? And so, like, how do I charge my car if I'm trying to get to like Yosemite or the Sierra Nevadas, right? Like, there's definitely some gas stations there, but there are no EV charging stations there, right? So, I'm sure you guys are scouting different locations, looking at different areas in California for you guys to potentially be putting these locations. So, like, do you think that's one of your challenges right now that you guys are facing about how to like expand and grow?
I don't think finding locations has been the biggest challenge. So, it's really funny. You mentioned going up the coast of California. One of the very first projects we did was look on, I think, I-5, and looked at every on and off ramp and checked how much solar, how many chargers are on each of them. And I know this was like 2 years ago, but I think within a mile of each, we found 2 fast charging stations and 1 solar output, which was crazy because there's like, 80 exits or something. So there's plenty of location, and I think plenty of demand of where to put them. I think one of our bigger challenges more recently, like, this past year with COVID, had been supply chain. Everyone was affected, everyone was hit. Folks in the industry who are familiar with these terms like switchgear, which is not used just for, our application, but for a lot of different electrical upgrades, was like a major issue to try to get. We're seeing a lot of, resolution of some of those supply chains now. But the installation process and pushing utilities to get these installed faster is really, I think, one of the challenges that we have to overcome, and have been working, very closely with the utilities and the CPUC to make sure we can get these on the ground.
Very cool. Yeah, it sounds like that should be the focus, is to actually work with the utilities themselves, right? Because they're the ones who, at the end of the day, are kind of looking at renewables, but also at the same time, like, they need to, integrate with different ways to generate revenue for themselves. And obviously solar is one of them. So then you guys provide like an essential service at the end of the day, right? So it's kind of funny to hear, like, the path that you are trying to go through right now isn't necessarily like, it's not necessarily like your challenge internally. Like, you guys have kind of already built out the function. You already have a site. It's been successful. You're seeing it adoption. But it's how do we scale this out, and how do we partner with the utilities to actually, get them involved in what we're trying to do here?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the bigger challenge. We've had a lot of great traction, and we welcome more. If you're a quick serve restaurant and want one of these stations, we install it with no upfront cost to the restaurant at all. So that's been, from a business model perspective, working out great. Our customers have been very satisfied with the model and excited, about what we're building right now for them.
I mean, that's super interesting to hear. It's zero upfront. I mean, how has like been pitching this to customers, right? Like what are they kind of hearing, or what are you guys hearing? What are they saying like when you are actually having these conversations with these franchisees talking about like what this project or cost would look like to them, and where they would start seeing value on the back end.
Yeah, so we're able to finance these without them paying anything for these hardware assets, which really excites them because it's a way to bring in folks who are excited about renewable energy, and it makes their whole a lot of these companies are starting to turn more and care more about the climate, and it makes their climate mission goals maybe more achievable.
Mhm.
And so they're very excited about that aspect. They're very excited about the aspect of bringing in new types of customers. Maybe the EV market segment is not a segment they've targeted before. Um, Actually, so we did interviews of our customers, and 50% come for just charging, and 50% come for food or food plus charging. So as far as we can tell, we're introducing, 50% of our customers are possibly new and wouldn't have come to this location otherwise, which that's something, that they get pretty excited about. Some of the funny, I've learned so much by working with like, this industry. I was in the renewable industry. I'd never really worked with quick serve restaurants before. Marketing is huge for them, right? And so we had to be careful when we're designing everything to not cover up any signs by accident. And like, we did tests of the solar carport angle from different angles to make sure at our first site at Taco Bell it wasn't covering the bell or anything like that. And just funny things, I've never had to think about before.
Yeah, it's super important, right, for them to be seen and noticed, right? I I tend to lean on like Google Maps to tell me where everything is, but like, yeah, you gotta make it easy for people to get in there, get in the door. And yeah, like it's funny like to see how McDonald's, Taco Bell's, Burger King's, like they spend so much money on marketing, right? But to target like almost a more consumer that's a little bit more maybe high end, that has the ability to afford these electric cars, is I can see a space that is one that they could see as growth. So I love that you're kind of throwing that into your pitch when talking to these prospective customers. And would you say the focus is mainly on kind of the your verticals, or is going to be quick serve restaurants? Are you guys focusing on any other verticals? I heard you mention retail earlier, but I'm just kind of curious, like where you guys see yourself expanding or growing.
So real quick on your comment on targeted high-end customers, yeah, it's a win-win situation because unfortunately that's been the situation until now. But really providing this in a diversified community in locations that everyone has access to, and in these underserved communities. Yes, we're bringing in a new populace for right now, but we're seeing more and more lower cost cars come on the market. Tesla just announced, I think 2025, they'll have a $25,000 car on the market. So we're going to keep seeing those prices drop and it become more affordable for everyone. And ultimately, we're hoping by putting these chargers in these areas, we're also enabling folks to buy an electric car who otherwise wouldn't have a place to charge. So it's a win for the quick serve restaurants. Back to your vertical question, though. Yes, we're pretty focused on quick serve restaurants, but the same model fits really nicely with retail. Because as I've said, our long-term plan is to really make this a seamless customer experience. And anywhere where somebody wants to buy something at a store or a restaurant in 15 to 30 minutes really lines up with the fast charging model. I would say we're not, for example, targeting movie theaters or I don't know, amusement parks where I don't think there's a huge incentive at least right now, for a car to be sitting there for a very long period of time.
Gotcha. Makes sense. So it's something that, Rebecca, like looking at, or the other founders are looking at over the next year, right? If we're talking again in April 2024, like what's something that you guys are working towards, you would like to be celebrating, by next year?
Well, hopefully we'll be celebrating the opening of at least 3, but hopefully 5 new ChargeNet sites. Our first one's at 465 El Camino Real in South San Francisco. We have another one that's currently in construction right now in Newark, which is awesome. And then we have 2 others that are definitely, going to begin construction in the next few months. So we're so excited to have multiple stations in the area, and I think that will really, help customers understand, now when they make a one of their accounts through our app, they can use multiple stations co-located in an area around the bay where they might be driving. And to us, that's really exciting because we could create an even better customer experience. Folks will know, oh, there's a ChargeNet there. There's definitely food. That's what we kind of want the association to be.
I like it. Yeah. So it's more brand recognition, a couple more locations, more adoption, and consistent users is kind of what I'm hearing for growth and scale.
Yep, absolutely.
And hopefully no more supply chain issues as well.
Yes, yes. Keep those switch gears coming, guys.
So as we wrap things up here, Rebecca, by the way, this has been really helpful and informative conversation. I feel like I've learned a lot about, what you guys are doing at ChargeNet Stations, and, your value, and what you guys provide. Like what else do you think, our listeners, need to know about you or the company, I guess, that we haven't covered thus far?
Oh, that's a great question. We are super excited about getting more community involvement, and I myself am always excited to help educate folks. If you happen to be in South San Francisco and are like a teacher or something and want us to do a tour of it, we're more than happy to do those sorts of kind of local educational events. We love showcasing what we've got here because we think it's really unique and really, cutting edge, honestly. And we want to see more of them. So more than happy to do that type of thing for anyone who's interested locally.
Love it.
Come check us out.
Yeah, I love that, Rebecca. One of my favorite classes from high school is my AP environmental science class. I feel like I learned a lot about wind energy, solar energy, geothermal energy, and I was back in like early 2000s in Tennessee. So like even having a class, that was kind of on the cutting edge back then, right around the Inconvenient Truth era. Definitely we still need to continue that education, and I love that, like, you guys are putting yourselves out there to try to educate the youth on what you guys are doing. So that's awesome. Where can people find you, Rebecca? Like, what's the best way for people to get a hold of you or to learn more about ChargeNet?
You could find me on LinkedIn, Rebecca Wolkoff. If you search it on LinkedIn with ChargeNet, sure I'll pop up. You can also find out more about ChargeNet at chargenetstations.com. And I also am part of 3, I think, pretty big communities in the renewable space. I'm very, very involved, like I said, with the Volta Foundation, where Battery Street is actually the name of the Slack channel there. I'm also and I also am involved and recommend 2 other communities. One is Work on Climate for folks who are interested in maybe switching careers to be climate focused, or if you just want to serve the climate community, it's a great location to meet people and understand what sorts of jobs are needed. And then there's a policy focused one called DER Task Force that I'll also pitch here. All of these are Slack communities. I think if you Google any of them, you'll find them, and you'll find me in various states of involvement on any of them.
Very cool. I love that. Yeah, we can kind of share a few of the Bolts Foundation, work on climate. You said DER task force.
Yes, yes.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'd love to make sure we can include those in the description for people who are interested. I'm definitely going to check those out as well. And I appreciate you being here and helping educate us on what you guys are doing at ChargeNet, how you guys are growing in the market, where your focuses are. So I definitely feel like I've learned a lot about, you, and you guys are a new player in this space, right? Trying to get your name out there. So we appreciate you being a part of the podcast and helping educate us on what you guys are doing, and hopefully I can start seeing some more ChargeNet solutions here in San Diego.
And we hope so too. Thank you so much for having us.
You bet. Well, that wraps up another episode of the Business Ninjas podcast, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great rest of the day. Cheers.